quasi modal verbs or semi modal verbs. What is the meaning of quasi? Quasi means half. What is modal verb? Modal verbs show possibility, intent, ability, or necessity because they are a type of auxiliary verb, which means helping verb. They are used together with the main of the sentence. Now let us see what are the modal verbs. Will, shall, can, may, must, would, should, could, might, ought to, need to, used to, dare to. Among these modal auxiliary verbs, ought to, need to, used to, dare to are called semi-modal verbs, which are also called quasi-modal auxiliary verbs. Now let us differentiate the modal auxiliary verb and quasi-modal verb with an example. I can lend you my pen. Here, can is the auxiliary verb, lend is a main verb. Whereas, I ought to obey my parents. Ought is the auxiliary verb, to is the infinitive, obey is a main verb. What is the difference between these two sentences? Although we have auxiliary verb can and main verb lend, over here ought to, obey. Now ought to is the only difference, to is the difference that we find between these two sentences. That's why we call these semi-modals as a quasi-modals. It gives off notation bringing the word to along with the auxiliary verb. Why do these ought to, need to, used to, dare to are called as a quasi-modal auxiliary verbs? They are called quasi-modal auxiliary verbs because these modals sit before the base form to create a unique meaning. For example, I shall go, I could go, etc. But with the ought to or need to, we have to insert the word to. I ought to go, it needs to go, to be done. Quasi-modal verbs are also known as marginal modal verbs. Now we are going to discuss about the four common quasi-modal verbs. They are ought to, used to, need to, dare to. Now let us take the first one, ought to. Ought to used to show when it is necessary or would be a good thing to perform the action referred. The meaning of ought to is should. The present form of ought to is must. Past tense is ought to. Must means mandatory or compulsory. Ought to means should. Ought to is more stronger to should, less stronger to must. Ought to has similar meaning to should. They both express the conditional. In other words, they refer to a recommended future action. Let's see the usage of ought to. Ought to expresses ideas such as duty, moral obligation, necessity. It is not as forceful as must, but it is stronger than should. Let's see the example for ought to. I ought to submit my assignment on time, which means I should submit my assignment on time. We ought to help the needy, which means we should help the needy. We ought to hire the furniture for the party, which means we should hire the furniture for the party. The next one is used to. As a semi-modal verb, used to is used to express something that existed or happened repeatedly in the past, but does not exist or happen now. When do we use this used to? Used to expresses the past habit, discontinued habit in the past, formal action, or previously. Let's see some of the examples for used to. My grandmother used to walk for long hours when she was young. I used to live in Mumbai. I used to drink coffee when I was young. These sentences expresses the idea that it was happening in the past but not of the present. To describe anything that was done in the earlier, we have to use used to. Need to. As a semi-modal verb, need is always used in negative and interrogative sentences to express necessity. Need to is used to indicate necessity, moral obligation. For example, I need to buy a packet of milk. We need to keep our environment clean. He need to study for exam. They need to talk to the higher officials. You need not wait for me. Thus, need is used for expressing our essential and necessary things. Dare to. The verb dare is both a main verb and a semi-modal verb. It means to challenge someone to do something he or she is afraid of doing, or to have the courage to do something. Dared to is used to express one's boldness, courage, and challenge. For example, I dare not go out in the dark. How dare you enter my room? I dare not ask her. How dare you speak to me?